and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists who are here to answer all of your questions about all things gardening. So before we get started, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about where you can find them. So Kay, we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm Kay Carnes. I'm a Champaign County Master Gardener, and I volunteer out at Allerton Park a lot and do my own garden.
Lots of herbs and,
Yes,
and vegetables at Kay's house. All right, Miss Martie.
Hi, I'm Martie Alanya, and I try to keep retiring from landscaping, but they keep dragging me back in. Also, my yard looks horrible. So it's not just you out there in TV land. And I'm really looking forward to a vegetable garden this year that's, you know, yielding something, because last year was pitiful. And it gave me heart, because a lot of people said, oh, my garden was pitiful this year.
Mine was bad last year.
It was terrible.
But I've heard some people say they had a banner year last year.
Yeah, but that's John Bodensteiner. He always said, and you.
He doesn't count.
And you, John and you. That's it.
You know what? I'm taking a page from the Martie Alanya gardening book this year. I bought a few bales of straw, and I am packing that baby down, because last year, one of the things that got me was weeds. By the time you go to a kid's baseball game or take an overnight trip, it's a jungle when you get home.
It is.
And so let's talk a little bit about that later, because I'm trying that this year, and fingers crossed that I'm not in there with my machete, you know, looking for a bean. So, anywho.
Don't go all Miss Piggy on them.
Yes. Okay, so Kay, you brought in some veggies.
Yes.
That's that time. So what'd you bring in?
Well, this is a red kale, and it's not turning red yet. As it gets older, you see more, it's more of a maroon color in it. And kale, I like kale. It's a little tough. The leaves are a little tough, but they are really good for stir fries, and the stems as well. And I learned something this year I hadn't known before. Last year, when I cleaned up the garden, I had these two kale plants, and they were this big around the stems, and they had dried out, and there were no leaves on them, and I left them in the garden. And this year I went out to clean them out, and lo and behold, there's new growth coming up from the bottom on both of them. And that was a surprise for me.
Free kale.
Free kale. So what I'm going to do with all these, I'm not entirely sure. But
do you think it was that mild winter that we
probably partially, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I left some cannas in the ground, so I mean, we'll see.
Maybe.
You never know.
That could actually happen. I did that one year with Brussels sprouts. They were just ravaged by cabbage looper, and I did everything I could. The rest of the garden was great, and I'm like, oh, you're so sad. And so in the fall, it froze a little bit. He's leaning pretty good. I brought in some bales of straw, and I just laid them where I was strategically going to separate them into flakes later the next year. I moved that bale the next spring, and there's this stem, down but not out. All these cute little Brussels sprouts growing on them, just fresh as a daisy. I took the bale off. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They were fantastic.
Wow.
They were so good. They were sweet. They didn't have that trace of bitterness that makes you go, you know, they're
They
just
just needed
not.
the
Oh my God.
neglect.
Ah, yes.
They just needed that
Scientific neglect. That's my forte. So wow, they were so good. So have you tasted the ones that grew yet? Or are they
No,
too
I
small?
haven't. I'm going to soon, because they're
wow.
probably going to be really good.
Oh, I would think so.
I bet.
Yeah.
So this falls under the cool season things that we can be putting out now, right?
Yes, it is. And kale is actually very healthy. It's got a lot of vitamins, and it adds fiber to your diet, and so it's really a good plant to grow. And then this is
Oh yeah,
That one.
Chard. Bright lights chard.
Yes,
I
it
can
is.
see the stem. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
and there's
I know what she's trying to say.
this little one in the center, and I don't know if she can see that, is kind of pink, and chard comes, the stems will be different colors, yellow and pink. And much like the kale, I use the stems for stir. I chop them up and use them for stir frying. And I also like the kale. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals in them that are really good for you. Some people, I think, probably wouldn't be crazy about the flavor, but it's
Kale's gotten really
tasty.
trendy all of a sudden. You see a lot of kale chips, kale products. I remember when it was garnish, and now we eat it. I mean, I'm not mad about it, but I just remember seeing it like dress up a salad bar, you know, back in the day.
It never dies, you know. It's really, I do.
And
like,
it can be a little chewy if you get it too old.
It can.
You know,
I mean, you don't
want
want to get it where it's yellowy at all, but I'll take the leaves and chiffonade them. I mean, tiny ribbons, you know, with a big knife, and sprinkle them in like tortellini soup or something like that. They settle down pretty good. They're not, you know, they're not too strangulating that way. And chard also, a lot of people grow that as a substitute for spinach. The flavor is very similar, but spinach will bolt as soon as it gets warm at all. It'll go to seed, and then even if you cut them off, the leaves are bitter. And I'm not a fan of spinach, but I don't mind chard too. I don't mind. Okay. I like spinach raw, but I don't like it cooked because it just looks a little snotty
So you
there.
can get a little bit more of a growing.
Can go on and on.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
You can cut them like you would kale or lettuce. You can cut those off. You know, take the whole stem, cut it, you know, 2 inches from the ground. Use what you want. Compost the rest, and then I just cut and come again.
Cut and come again.
Yep. And it won't bolt.
Good to know. And then you said the flavor is similar. I don't think I've eaten chard before.
Do you want to taste it? It's just pinch a piece off of there. I don't find it as,
like, wait a minute.
I don't find it as strong as spinach.
There you go.
There's kale.
That should be tender.
And
now this I've had.
What about the chard?
I don't know if I've had chard.
A pinch of chard.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, the chard. Well, it's kind of not big enough. But
Yeah.
Leafy, just nip the end off of that
Just
leaf
a little,
there.
little. Oh, the big one you gave me there. The prize, huh?
Yeah, it's real mild.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very spinach-like.
Yeah,
Very spinach-like. All right. Well, let me add that to the list.
There you go. You're welcome.
Plus, they're pretty. You know,
Yes.
when
they're
you
beautiful,
get all the stems are so gorgeous
Yeah.
color.
Now, will
sell
you
it-
be fighting with the rabbits and the deer? And
Probably.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They like it too.
Yeah.
Did you grow this?
Yes.
You started
From
this.
seed.
Okay, yeah. It's easy to start from seed, but they also sell it as a spring vegetable in garden centers. And you can see, even when they're small like that, like Kay was saying, that the stem on this one's just got a little pinkish hue there. And they also, it's a variety called Bright Lights.
Nice.
Bright Lights chard. And the stems will come up red and pink and orange and yellow and paler yellow and stronger yellow.
Oh, wow.
They're beautiful in the garden.
are.
They're so ornamental. They're
So
really
you get to
nice.
enjoy it multiple ways.
Yes,
when
it's
growing.
I mean,
it's
you
a
could
visual
put it
delight is
like
what it
as
is.
a back
That's it.
plant in a flower bed.
Yeah.
I did grow ornamental kale last fall on the porch, and it was so pretty. All those colors coming out of the crown.
They're amazing,
I
aren't
thought, wow, this is lovely to look at. So now I'm interested to see how chard performs. Kay brought in a sample and has a question for one of our panelists.
So I have this
me.
nasty grass that is all over in patches in our yard. And I see it everywhere. There's an old pioneer cemetery across from us, and it's in there. And it's in the only yards I haven't seen it is people that have them sprayed all the time.
Yeah.
But it's really obnoxious, and it's getting
Does it
worse.
grow in clumps, or does it circle,
Kinda,
or
and
how does
it's kind of irregular clumps,
irregular clumps?
and they can be big. You know.
All right, Miss Landscaper, what is she battling?
And is there anything we can do about it? I mean, we got so much of it. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure this is, the common name is Nimblewill, and I can't remember what the Roman/Latin name is for it.
Oh, it's so long I can't even pronounce it.
It looks like
Muhlenbergia?
Muhlenbergia.
Sherbury?
Okay. Muhlenbergia is a nice ornamental grass in a larger version, but this is not a nice ornamental grass, and nobody likes this because it's a bent grass, I believe. So it's got multiple little stems and stuff, and then it kind of creeps, so it sort of lays flat. And then the old stems will croak over like this, and they look terrible. They look like your lawn's dying, when actually it's just this stuff. If I'm not mistaken, that's what you have, and you're not going to get rid of it without pulling. Because
Pulling
the
or
grass,
poison.
yeah,
We have 2 acres. I don't think I'm going to be pulling.
No. So you could spot treat it with, you know, an herbicide of some kind, or a grass, something specifically for grass. But yeah.
How does something like this? How do these invasive? I don't even know if that's the right word, but how does that get into your yard? Birds, animals, kind of dropping them
wind,
by.
Yeah,
Just,
I think our
Seeds.
yard is
because
really...
you haven't had this forever in your yard, right? It just sort
No,
of.
just this year we really noticed it a
starts
lot. But our yard is really old. The house is old and the yard is old.
Gotcha.
You know, we have new houses and yards across the road from us, and but even some of them I'm seeing, the ones that
Interesting.
don't get sprayed.
Well, as little as these are, as low growing as they are, they still obviously are going to put on seed. And then if there's any seed left in this in the spring, birds always look for dead material to make their nests with. So some of it might go. And it's a little bit shade tolerant. It likes sun, but it will grow in shade. And like I said, it's a creeper. It's a bent grass, so it grows very low, and it kind of goes this way. Yeah. So here's all your perennial rye looking good, and then it just bends it over and puts down a node, and pretty soon,
It's all choked out and yikes.
Yeah,
So that's
it
not
makes
the
its own
news you
little
wanted,
place.
I'm sure.
Well, I figured
At least you've got a name for it now.
There's a variety of Muhlenbergia called pink muley grass. It's Muhly, and it's a beautiful ornamental. It's just barely hardy here, but if you have a microclimate that's really, really sunny, this just grows up like a little ornamental grass, and it's like, oh, that's nice. And then it puts on these beautiful inflorescences of flamingo pink seed heads, and they're just
It's in the same family
lovely.
as that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, according to Google, you know, what do they know?
Oh, what do they know? Okay, we've got a question. Let's see. Karen from Springfield wants to know. She put Morning Glory in last year. Don't roll your eyes. Because some people have strong feelings on this show about Morning Glory.
Yeah.
I like them. I think they're just simple and pretty, but I know they get on people's nerves.
Oh, I've grown them for,
she grew some, and last year the vines were abundant, but she never got any of the flowers, those lovely blue flowers. So, and it's in full sun. So do you guys have any idea why, or any tips? Because I'm sure they'll reseed. They'll be back. So have you seen that before, or do you have any advice?
I don't have morning glory, so I'm not familiar, but I'm sure.
We used to grow morning glories on the dog pen. My dad had hunting dogs, and there was a big oak tree there, but in order to provide them even more shade, we plant morning glories every, 5 or 6 years. And then they would just drop seeds. That's all you had to do.
They'll be back.
But they always bloomed. I would suggest that she do some high phosphorus fertilizer. Now, morning glories grow in the richest and poorest of soils. They don't mind poor soil at all. But to encourage the bloom, do some phosphorus.
Okay.
So, and they may have been fertilizing them thinking, oh, then they'll bloom better. But if you don't use the right kind of fertilizer, if you use something that's high in nitrogen, you'll get boatloads of growth.
Yes.
Leafy, stemmy growth. But phosphorus is what makes your
Phosphorus flowers.
Remember,
that's how I remembered that from the Master Gardener class.
Well, phosphorescence is like a glow. And to me, phosphorus flowers.
Phosphorus flowers. You were about to get super scientific.
Well, I just think it kind of, those are the,
Yes.
You know what I mean.
I do. I know where you were going with it. I know where you were going with it.
Nitrogen feeds the first thing you see, the stem. And phosphorus is for the second thing you see, the blooms. And the
Potassium?
Potassium, that'd be it. It feeds the roots, the last thing you think about.
See, that's another way to remember it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Karen, another Karen, wants to know, she grows onions every year, and she said they never get very large in her garden. And so this year is the year of the large onion for her. What tips do you have to make her onions
Dun, dun, dun,
larger?
dun.
She wants bigger onions this year.
Well, I would space, I don't know how close she spaces them, but
Yeah.
she might try spacing them a little further apart.
Okay.
Loosen the soil really well, and I don't know where she gets her bulbs to the onion sets. I usually try to pick out the biggest ones, and that should help.
Okay. So look for the healthy sets, the bigger, healthier sets, and then give them a little bit more room at planting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you
Anything
could throw
else?
in some compost to keep that soil loose. Don't let the soil get packed down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and we were looking at her garden plot, and she was dreading having to till in leaves into this garden spot. And it's the lowest spot in her yard, so great for water, but my garden is the same way. So it's the last place to dry out. It's hard to dig it. So she's got maple leaves, and I said, those are really soft. Just treat them like mulch.
That's
Just
what I.
pull them back. You know, if you're going to put a tomato plant in, rake it back to about a foot or so. Take a chunk out of there with your shovel. Loosen the root ball, loosen the soil in the hole. You're going to bury some of the tomato stem anyway. Put that soil back and pull the leaves up around and
pull
give
the
it a
leaves.
squirt. You're good. You know, and she's like, you don't have to till those in. I'm like, have you been to the forest? No, you don't have to till those in. So, no.
We create a lot of extra work for ourselves
Do it the
sometimes.
lazy way. Yeah.
I used leaves last year as between the paths of my bed, and on the beds I mulched.
too.
I mulched my garlic with leaves last year.
Oh, yeah.
And do you leave them whole, or do you crush them?
No,
do you,
I left them whole.
Just leave them whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
I
were
mean,
really
I've got a
dry.
lot of leaves
Okay,
I
now,
can get too.
yeah.
If you have like oak, like white oak leaves, or any kind of oak leaf, but white oak especially, we had swamp white oak all over our yard, and they're stalwart. They are. So my dad built himself a chipper out of an old lawnmower, and he got a hopper from somewhere, I don't know. And we shred those because they really, they'll last over the winter. So we chipped them up, and they'd come out. I don't know. The biggest pieces were probably the size of a dime, and we'd use that. And even then, pathways, wherever you put it,
It's
they
going
were
to
good.
stay.
Yeah.
It's going to stay.
No, there's no weed that's tough enough to grow through.
Excellent.
We
Good
have
advice.
silver maples, so
Yeah,
they're
we
a
have
little
soft
easier
she
to
does too.
crumble up.
I said, these are so soft. I mean, they're already turning almost gray after the winter, so they're
Just
fine.
use what you got.
Yeah,
I
but
like
she
that.
said she had a hard time growing radishes. And I said, well, why don't you try putting them in a container? Because it's pretty low here, and you're going to need a lot of water. But get a big old pot, use some sand, and use some compost. I happen to own a really reliable
Compost
source
machine.
for compost. Yeah. So, if you get some well-rotted compost and put some sand in it even, and plant your root crops in there, or plant, if you want potatoes or carrots, plant them in a raised bed, and onions, because like Kay was saying, root crops, they're just not going to get big if they're too wet. They get scabby, and if it's the soil's too hard, they just simply cannot.
yeah.
It's too hard for
Break
them to
it
get
up.
bigger.
Okay.
So make it easy on them.
Okay. That's a lot of great advice. Speaking of pots, Anne Grill wants to know, for folks living in condos or apartments who still would like to garden, what are some plants, and let's do vegetables and maybe some, they mentioned pollinators specifically, but what are some easy things to grow in pots on a balcony? What do you think?
Well,
Tomatoes?
Green, yeah. There's a line of
determinant.
tomatoes that are actually dwarf tomatoes.
Wow.
specific
the
for
patio
pots.
bush, yeah,
and
I've
they
seen
only
those.
get about 2
Okay.
feet high, and I grew them a couple of years ago, and they really did well.
Stayed
you know.
compact, fairly compact?
Yeah, they're just little, but boy, they have a bunch of tomatoes
Okay.
on them.
All right.
So
okay.
that's an option.
That's one.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, you can, depending on the size the space you have, but yeah, those, and also if you look on the packet of seeds or on the label for the tomatoes, it'll say determinate or indeterminate. Indeterminate tomatoes are the ones that, given a trellis, will climb to the gutters. But determinate tomatoes are smaller. Determinate tomatoes are used a lot in commercial growing because they put on a big flush and they ripen all at once, and then they can pick them all and process them. But they will bloom more and they'll produce more fruit later in the season. But they're just a little bit smaller and more manageable. I mean, you're probably going to need a tomato cage, but they'll stay within the confines of that pretty reliably. And also, gosh, any kind of lettuce,
Yeah.
radishes,
Lettuce is a good one.
greens.
carrots, kale. If you're on a balcony, you never have to worry about a rabbit eating these.
That's
So-
true. You've got a leg up on all of
Yeah, you
us.
totally do.
Or deer.
or deer,
Or
yeah.
deer.
Yeah.
Or deer. That's absolutely
great,
true.
yeah.
So you'll get to enjoy your
You
harvest.
can do that.
Unlike
And,
the three of us sitting here.
you know,
Because we have to
depending on-
share.
Well, you know what, and if, I don't know how big your space is, like I said, but if you can get some big pots, they don't even have to be that deep. I mean, 18 inches, 2 feet is plenty of depth for your soil. Wide is a little more important in my opinion. And then you can do bush beans if you like green beans. You can do those in a big pot. If you put 4 or 5 green bean plants in a pot that big, you're just going to start throwing them away after a while. But I mean, corn's probably out of the question.
Zucchini? Can you grow zucchini on a balcony?
You can probably do one in a pot.
Otherwise,
Oh yeah,
no,
and,
you're not
and
gonna
make
get
a
much sun.
teepee or put a tomato cage
Cage in it.
upside down. Yeah.
that's a good idea.
So the big leaves go out like that, and then you can still train the stem a little bit where it gets narrower.
all
which
your
is
neighbors
what
will
you
be
need.
knocking on your door, asking for fresh produce.
No. If you grow zucchini,
You'll be
you
leaving
leave
them
it in
on
the
their
middle of
door.
the night. My land
That's
sakes
true,
alive.
that's
Where
true.
did that come from?
Speaking of critters, Judith says, again, the squirrels ate all my tulips. Any tricks to protect them? Can I put them in a container? What is the best way to keep them safe? So something is loving her tulips. Squirrels.
Squirrels.
Rabbits eat them too.
Yeah.
Rabbits? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she's just missing the rabbits, but
They're nocturnal.
There's repellents I think you can buy, but I don't know how effective they are.
okay.
And spray them, but you could put them in bigger, pots. And set 'em.
Set them out that way.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have any tulip tricks that you can say on television that are nice to squirrels?
I grew up eating wild game.
All right. So
However,
moving
yeah.
on.
However,
Yes.
you can also do
A slingshot.
chicken
or
wire.
BB
Yeah.
gun.
Yeah. Do you have a cat? Get a cat. Yeah, you can.
Chicken wire.
Chicken
That's a
wire,
good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the prettiest thing in
I
the
was
world.
going to say it's aesthetically.
Yeah, not
you
too
give,
great.
you lose,
But
you
if you
take.
get, you get a big piece, get it pretty tall, and then get, I know the tulips are only going to get like this or maybe like that, but get the tall that comes in different widths. So you can get, 2 feet wide, get 4 feet wide, bend it over in the middle, make a circle and then bend it together. Do it with twine or something. That'll keep all the
Really
critters
make them
away
work
from-
for it. They've
Yeah.
got to earn
Yeah.
it at that point.
Yeah.
We've got about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to ask just
We have
some.
more stuff to say.
I know. Well, somebody's going to have to make the show an
Fine.
hour. I say we make a petition for it.
Okey
But are things that we have in a greenhouse, are they technically already hardened off, or do you have to harden off coming out of a greenhouse?
No, you have to harden them off because they're protected in the greenhouse, and so they, I would harden them off outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked
Oh, yeah.
because I did not know that. I wasn't sure. I knew it kept them warm. I knew it kept them protected and out of the wind and elements, but I wasn't for sure if that dip that they feel in the nighttime equates to being actually outside.
The wind is the main thing, I
Yes.
think.
Wind, okay.
That's why I just posted on my Facebook page not too long ago how the collection has begun. I do 2-liter soda bottles and gallon milk jugs, and I cut the bottom out completely and the top out pretty much. If you leave the handle on the milk jug, it's just easier. Chunk, chunk. You know, but put those around. You got this little mini greenhouse. Plenty of light gets in. It holds some heat, but that's not it really why I'm doing it. You cut the top off so the heat can get out, really. You don't want to cook them in there. But wind, varmints, you know, by the time they get to be this tall, things don't eat them quite as heartily.
And they're ready to stand and...
Yeah, and it's like tomatoes or something like that, peppers. You're gonna, I grow mine on a cattle panel, but they'll get big, they'll be big enough to, they're so easy. They're galvanized, they never rust. You can form them however you want. They're
All my
perfect.
vining,
Yes.
pole beans.
Me too.
Last year I had
Cucumbers.
Yeah.
Why bend over?
I got to look into cattle panels now, I guess.
Oh, awesome. They're awesome.
And I actually had some.
Okay, we're going to Rural King when we leave here.
Field trip.
Okay.
Somehow I managed to get some round. I cut them.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Interesting.
oh, there's nothing better than, and hog panels too.
Hog
They're
panels
a little
too.
shorter.
Okay. Yeah, hog panels are shorter, cattle panels are taller, but you can cut them with a cable cutter, and you can make them. You can make any narrow or wide as you want. They're thrilling.
We got to end it there, ladies. We're out of time. Doggone it.
got more
We'll pick it up
stuff.
here next time. We'll pick it up here next time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, just send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com or search for us on Facebook. And we will see you next time. Good night.